All right, we're taking you to the book. So let me set up the premise. We're gonna tag team this a little bit, but the premise of this book, I think, stems from the problem that by our nature we are hunters and gatherers, but we are living in an age of information, and so we have become ravenous to find and consume information. And so we hunt for it, we gather it, we scroll endlessly for it, we take in lots of information. But why is it then that our best ideas are in the shower, on a run, falling to sleep at night? It's when we get quiet and we get introspective that we can actually listen to ourself think. And that's the premise of a clarity break. And we've all known this, we've been taught this, but we've noticed as implementers that it's really hard to get our senior leaders to go and take the time to sit down and reflect and think and dream and ask really tough questions. And so, as Chris and I talked about developing some tools to help, the questions became obvious, but there's a deeper level that not all questions should be asked or answered in all seasons. And so, what we introduce in this book is what we call the creator's cycle. And the creator cycle looks like what you'd see in nature with the four seasons. And what that looks like in our life as we all go through this naturally, our energy levels, if you want to think of it that way, go through this cycle. And so it starts in spring, and spring's your planning season. So if you've ever woken up and have like a million ideas and lots of energy and you maybe overcommit to a few things, that's spring. You're in spring, endless ideas, lots of energy, lots of new relationships. That's your spring. That's your planning season. And then you move into summer, and summer is about executing. So when we go from lots of ideas and lots of yeses, we go to hyper focus in the summer. When you feel like you're in your zone, in your flow, you're moving in your unique gifting, that's your summer. You're executing. And then here's the irony, no matter if that's hyper successful or if it turned out to be a failure, you end up in the fall. So Chris, take over.
Yeah, that transition to fall, you've left the execution season, you've harvested all your crops, and or executed your plan, right? And maybe now after you've executed, you look back, maybe you're feeling a little disappointed, maybe you're getting a little bored, or worse, maybe a little depressed, right? You kind of feel like wandering off away from your team and your people for maybe a little while. And the thing is, both success and failure can lead to the doldrums, right? Maybe you executed your plan flawlessly, but you didn't produce the results that you wanted, and that makes you feel a little like, oh, you missed the mark, right? So that's the doldrums. The when you leave the doldrums, you're now going into winter, the cocooning season. And it kind of feels like winter, maybe, right? Warm and cozy by the fire. You all the crops are harvested, everything's in the storage rooms. You will find peace in this season. And when you find that peace, you're going to get reflective. You're going to be grateful looking back across the year of executing your VTO. Maybe some of the challenges that you faced and overcame helped shape you. Maybe they even changed you, maybe for the better, right? Now, there are some do's and don'ts in these seasons, and particularly in cocooning. Some of the things that you want to be doing, one, you want to find solitude, right? And that's where the CFG comes into play. Find a place where you can be in quiet reflection. You want to start engaging with new thoughts now, right? The year's behind you, you're looking forward, and you're dreaming about your future. Now, some of the things you don't want to do when you're in the doldrums is start listening to that inner monologue of self-doubt. Don't let that creep in. You got to keep your confidence high. The other thing is don't jump on your ideas too quickly, right? You got to let them germinate a little bit. And we know all you visionaries have tons and tons of ideas, and we love that. We need those ideas. Not all of them are great, right? But we want you to be open and let those things start flowing in. But don't fill up your time on the past. You got to process the year, right? But now is the time where in cocooning, you want to start opening up again, start dreaming again, start thinking about the next year. So that's the doldrums or cocooning, sorry. You want me to keep going, Benj? We talked about the 5th season.
Do it.
So, if hopefully you'll get a copy of the Clarity Field Guide. And before I talk about the 5th season, I want to share a quote from the book with you all. And it's at the front of the book. And I just love this. And I think it's going to resonate with all of you. So if you'll indulge me for a minute, I'm going to share this. This is from our former Secretary of Defense, 4-star General James Mattis, Marine Corps. And he says, if I was to sum up the single biggest mistake of senior leadership in the information age, it's a lack of reflection. Solitude allows you to reflect while others are reacting. We need solitude to refocus on prospective decision-making rather than just reacting to problems as they arise. So that's purposely at the front there because I think that's a great way to get your head in the game here for your clarity breaks. And so hopefully you found that helpful. But when you go down to the collective clarity, and if you come that far in the book, hopefully you've worn it out. Right, because this is a time where you're kind of you've gone through the 4 seasons, you've reflected, you've maybe come up with some new ideas, you're kind of moving forward, and maybe now as you get through all of that, you are reflecting on some of the successes and accomplishments that you have had. The season of collective clarity is these questions, you guys, that are in the book. They don't necessarily have to be answered by yourself. So when you kind of transition and you think of that 5th season, this is where you can go back to your leadership team and include them with some of these questions, getting their perspective, getting their answers, kind of protecting your confidence too. But the 5th season is where you actually can engage with your leaders through these questions and work on them together.
Jennifer, we'll kick it back to you. So just to conclude, the idea is this is a cycle and it's never ending. One of the questions that we often get is how long is each stage? And that's very dependent on the person, their season of life, what they're into. Are you in something that's a fit with your personality and your wiring? Or are you fighting against that? But what we're really hoping that people get out of this is it's kind of like jujitsu. And if somebody throws a punch, you can try and use your force to stop the punch, or you can use that energy and flow with it. And so if we can take the minute to understand what season we're in, we can use that to our advantage and not try and fight against it. So it is a cycle, and you come out of that cocooning season that Chris was talking about, and you're right back into the spring, to the planning, to the ideas. It starts germinating and getting exciting again. And you're like, yes, this is why I do this. Let's go. So one of the things we thought was super cool is this idea of collective clarity fits so well with what you guys are all doing, taking the time out of your day to come together with other integrators and say, hey, I need some collective clarity. Here's my issue.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris and Benj. And